Life is cruel. It was something my father taught me very early. He used to work in a factory at the far end of the city. He was a happy, honest man back then. Was is the key word here. When he lost his job, he used to come home drunk off his ass and beat my mother bloody for scolding him. And then go on beating what little anger he had left in his fists into me before he passed out in his chair. Over the years, my mother's scoldings became less and less frequent. And in the end, all that built-up anger inside of him went out over me one night instead. And what did my mum do? She turned her gaze away in shame. I awoke in my bed, my sheets and clothes dry with blood, and my cheeks burning hot from my tears. It was a feeling that would soon grow all too familiar to me. Despite being drunk as hell, my father was no fool. He always made sure to beat me anywhere but the face. Questions only brought trouble. And after growing up, it turned out that this was one of the few things I agreed with my father on. I left that abusive home behind at the age of 18 and I joined the military. Or at least that's what I would like to tell you. Did you come here to hear the story of a man who explored star systems, fought aliens for what he believed in, and died a hero's death? Too bad. This ain't that kind of a tale. I left my home when I was 18, true, but I wasn't accepted into Terran military. Too mentally unstable and physically weak was the only excuse I ever got from them. No, instead I spent my early 20s traveling the galaxy as a stowaway on several ships, working as whatever anyone needed me as, whenever I landed on a new planet. I worked as a male prostitute in the Armstrong Nebula. On Germany too, I worked alongside those yellow little fucks, the Gorgnaks, on the Austerlitz Heat Railroad that would later span the entire planet. Hell, I even got a job as a butcher once in an almost deserted port town just off the coast of Arcadia, the gambler's city. Yes, I worked a whole lot of jobs as I moved about the galaxy. By the time I turned 26, I had seen close to half the galaxy, or at least that's what I'd like to believe. One day I found myself stranded in a small town that I would later come to know as Armadillo. It didn't look like much. It had a sheriff's office, 2 shops, one general and the other a weapons shop, along with a bar, a barber shop, and a small train station for the Heat Railroad that went through town. With little money to my name, or in my pockets, I started to look for a job, though none were to be found. When I finally reached the sheriff's office, he only asked if I could handle a rifle, to which I nodded silently, not wanting to lie to a lawman's face with anything more than a nod. He handed me a rifle real quick, borrowed me a steel horse, and before I knew it, I was riding off alongside him and his 3 deputies into the desert across the railroad. He had hired me to tag along with him and his lawmen to take out a group of 8 outlaws that was harassing and burning down outlying ranches and kidnapping their daughters. Upon arriving to the scene, we were fired upon real quick. I can't say my first time pulling the trigger on a rifle was anything exciting, but the first time I killed someone gave me a feeling of sorts. When I watched a young man stop abruptly in the middle of reloading his own rifle and fall like a boneless fish to the ground, I felt empty inside. I hated that feeling. For the rest of the gunfight, I mostly just aimed for the outlaws' weapons, but I didn't hit any of them. The sheriff and his lawmen cleaned up the remaining ones inside the house. After the whole ordeal, the sheriff hired me as his 4th and last deputy, and I met Lily, one of the girls that we saved during the outlaws' little raid on their ranch. Me and her hit it off quite well, and within only a few months I had moved in with her at their cattle ranch, helping her and her family run the place and keep it going. For once in my life it felt like I had a purpose, something to live for. After my daughter was born, life didn't feel as horrible anymore. We named her Elizabeth, and her first word was Papa. It was the happiest time in my life. However, I would soon have to bite the dust for believing in the impossible. Just like my father before me had. 4 years of peace flew me by. An early November morning, I awoke to the sound of screams and gunshots out in the yard by the large barn. I quickly got dressed and rushed out with my gun in hand. What greeted me would haunt me for the remaining years of my life. The barn door was closed shut and it was engulfed in flames. Over the burning wood, I heard the screams of women and children. Outside of it hung 3 of the farmhands with ropes around their necks. My mouth hung ajar in disbelief. My wife, my child. When my muscles started to work alongside my screaming mind, I leapt forward and sprinted towards it, trying my best to pull up the burning barn doors, screaming the name of my wife and daughter. However, all of my efforts left me only with burn scars that would remind me of my failure for the rest of my life. I sat there, outside the burning wooden husk that held everything that had been dear to me and what I thought would be my future, the entire night. When I came to, I rose up and mounted my horse. I wanted to get away from there, far away. I wasn't told until 2 years later that I was a wanted man for the murder of everyone at that ranch. Where did I go after the purpose of my life was ripped from my bare hands? I left that planet on the first carrier I could afford a ticket to. The rest of my credits went to drinking myself to oblivion every night at some local bar on a backwater planet. And when I didn't have enough credits, I took odd jobs and cried myself to sleep. My life had turned into a struggle to get the credits to afford enough alcohol to not have to cry at night over the death of my family. I was a wreck. Soon enough, the odd jobs ran out and I was forced to do the unthinkable, steal and rob from innocent people. To this day I still remember the first time I robbed someone at point blank with my empty gun. I had sold all my rounds for credits to buy booze. The couple were scared shitless, but so was I. My hands were shaking and I tripped on my words several times while ordering them to give me all their credits. Just like that, I had become an outlaw, wanted by the local lawmen. Years passed by though, and I was never caught. 12 long years to be more exact. I turned from robbing and stealing to smuggling. I didn't just smuggle drugs, illegal weapons and stolen robot or ship parts. No, I even smuggled human cargo on several occasions. Was I disgusted by it? Yes. Did I do it anyway because the credits were good and my employer was solid? Yes. However, soon enough the ship I had named after my late wife broke down and I was forced to sell her. I was stranded in Arcadia of all places, and after losing my remaining credits to a few poor gambles and the good booze over there, I turned from smuggling to killing. I was recruited into a gang as a hired gun, and everything just spiraled downwards after that decision. To this day I have the blood of drug addicts that refuse to pay their debts, homeless thieving kids, proud lawmen, escaped slaves and innocent witnesses on my hands. For every kill, the period where I felt that empty feeling inside of me was prolonged. I was certain that one day I would kill someone and the emptiness would never cease. One day I was hired by a legend in the galaxy. One of them four-armed tin locks. Everyone always spoke of his past heists, his kill count, how many duels he had won, and often debated what his actual bounty must be at. Four-leaf clover is what they called him, four-leaf for short. If it was a respectful pun on his physical attributes or his incredible luck in shootouts, I had no idea. I didn't care much about the details. I only wanted credits to cover a place to sleep, 3 meals of food, and maybe even a woman or alcohol to keep me warm for the night. On the first night he told us about his grand plan and how he had gathered us all here to be a part of it. However, he told us that once he revealed his plan, you couldn't back out. So he gave us until tomorrow morning to make up our minds. Till then, booze and food was served for the many outlaws that had gathered out in a mountain valley on one of Duxian's moons. However, morning never came for me. After getting pretty wasted from the booze, I accidentally knocked into someone on my way to get some food. The alien hit the ground, and silence fell over the encampment when Four-Leaf rose from it, spitting dust and gravel from his vertical mouth as his eyes landed on me. No words were spoken. Our hands edged closer towards the holsters holding our guns. Draw. A distant voice carried over the dead silence, and 2 shots were heard, bouncing off the cliff walls surrounding the valley. I saw Four-Leaf Clover fall to the ground with a smoking hole in his chest, before I too descended to the dust. Holy shit. I heard some of the other aliens mutter. That human killed Four-Leaf. I can't fucking believe it. While everyone around me was freaking out over what had just happened, I felt darkness falling slowly upon my vision, and that empty feeling filled every corner of my mind. Life's cruel, but in this very moment, if I close my eyes, I can see my wife and daughter waiting for me on the very same hill where I got married to my love. Elizabeth is stretching out her arms to hug me, shouting, "Papa, don't cry. I love you." And with a smile across my lips, I never opened my eyes again. Author's name and link to original text is in the description.